everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today for you I am going to do a pattern design that is specifically for the Arcos and the Eos, which are two beads that are designed par Puca or for Puca, who is a designer in France. We have these tutorials and many other beautiful things that she's done with the beads that she created on our website. However, because she is French, they are in French. So she has given me permission to do some videos for you guys of the different instructions. She does really great picture tutorials. So when you're looking at them, they're actually pretty easy to follow along because they are, they have the lines and everything and arrows, but like I said, they are in French. So as you look at them, you will get them. And a lot of people have said they're in French. I don't have the ability to actually go in and translate them in the document because of the way that it is sent to me. But you could go into Google Doc or to Google Translate and try to translate as well. But her pictures overall are really good and they're really easy to understand. This design that I will be doing for you today is an element, and it is called the Mina. So I've done one already that is the Mino, and the Mino looks like this, and it's a little pendant, or you can do it as a different piece. And what she did is these components, she used them on the side in some of them. They can be done independently as their own bracelet. Like I said, it uses the par Puca beads, or the beads that were designed for her par Puca. The beads that we'll be using, if you need any of them, we'll put a little drop down on the left-hand side here that links to all the different materials if you do want to purchase from us online. To do the Mina project, you are going to be using some Arcos beads. So the Arcos beads, if you're unfamiliar with them, they're 3-holed arch-shaped beads. You can see them here in the crystal Labrador silver, and then here in that bronze or that brass color. And I'm going to be using, for my design, the white mint luster in the Arcos. Again, they do have 3 holes. Some of them will be using the middle hole, and others we will not be using the middle hole at all. So for some of her designs, you use all of the holes. Some of them you just use the outer 2 holes. So it's kind of, you have that extra hole that gets covered a lot on the outer edge, but you can usually see on the inside there. But nobody's going to be inspecting your work and actually seeing that. To go along with the Arcos, the latest design bead by Puca is the Eos bead. The Eos bead, it's I-O-S, and in French it's pronounced Eos, is a 2-holed bar-shaped bead, but it's a little bit more rounded, almost like a tic-tac shape on the sides, and then flat when it comes down, or on the top, and then flat when it comes down the edges. So it fits in nicely here. Here it is in that mint luster color. I'm going to switch up and use it in the metallic matte beige, so a nice silver kind of connection. In addition to the 2 par Puca beads, so the Arcos and the Eos bead, I'm also going to be using some seed beads. The seed beads on the side of this Mina are some 11-0 seed beads and some 15-0 seed beads and some 8-0 seed beads. And then the last bead that is there on the edges, which you can choose to use or not use, I'll kind of go over both of you. This one here is the little, the Minos bead. So it's a little tiny kind of Minos bead. And for the Minos bead, I'll be picking up kind of that same kind of grayish color. So you can choose to use them or not use them. The project, this element only calls for 4. I'll show how you can extend it and make it into an actual bracelet if you want to do that, and kind of keep going with the design. You would need more than that. But it actually only calls for, if you just want to do kind of one piece, make a necklace out of that piece, it only calls for 4 of the Minos beads. So I don't want you to have to buy a whole thing. You can easily replace that with the 8-0s. I will show it with the Minos, like in here, these are the Aztec Gold or the Flex, depending on kind of what supplier name you like, but they're the that matte gold color. For the 11-0s, I have the opaque smoke gray luster in the Miyuki brand. That's going to go nicely. That'll go right on the outside of the Arcos. And then my 8-0, which kind of goes on the sides, I have the forest green lined crystal in the 8-0 seed bead. Because this is just a component or an element, I'll show how to start kind of just with a stop bead and continue to going. But you could actually easily do this as a bracelet. Or like I said, I have the Mino design here because you could use the 2 Minas on the sides of that to be the actual sides of this necklace. So there's a lot of different options that you could do. I even see just kind of adding in some other Minos beads to be the side beads here too. For my thread to do the design, I will be using 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and I am using the gray color. The gray color seems to have a tiny bit of a difference in composition or in the coating than the green, the black, and the white. So I do have my thread heaven here, or a thread conditioner that I will be pulling my thread through to kind of give it that waxy feel, and pulling that thread through and conditioning the thread to keep it from fraying and to keep it from tangling and make it go through the beads easier. So I will be doing that. We're going to start with about 5 feet of beading thread, and you'll want a size 10 or 11 or 12 needle to work with that. I just have this English style Prony brand needle here. In addition, the one thing that I did neglect to say, you can also add in the middle, and in Puca's design, she did have this, a little crystal, and I have the Monty's in the SS12, which is a 3mm that will stick right in the middle of our little Arcos collection there. To get started, like I said, because it's a component, we're not necessarily going to start with an actual clasp or anything like that. It's a 1 needle project. We'll start with a stop bead basically, and we will start the project and then kind of continue on with the design, and then you'll easily be able to see how you can repeat the design and start that over so that you would have another one of the cross sections here to make it a bracelet if you would like. So again, to get started, you want about 5 feet of your thread. You can have a thread burner or a thread zap handy. Your needle nose pliers to kind of flatten out the end of that thread so that we can thread it on your needle. And in this case with the gray, I like to have my thread heaven right there, or the thread conditioner, a wax to pull the cording through to get started. Go ahead also and pour out little piles of all of your beads to make these little components. So to get started, I have my thread here on my needle. And what I'm going to be doing is actually starting at one of the base ends. So Puca kind of does the how to get started with that. If you want to and you're not crazy about the ending, or you know you want to repeat, you can start like this and then just take off the end pieces, because it is one line, you will have a tail. So to get started, I have my thread and needle. And the first thing we're going to do is set up this Arcos bead here with that ISO coming out the end, and basically create that little curvature as well as the design on the end. Like I said, the Arcos bead have 3 holes. Here on the sides, when we're working with it, and in the middle too, we're only going through the 2 outer holes. So we're going to use the seed beads to kind of decorate and hide the ends. To start, we're going to take our needle and thread, and I'm trying to go as much in order and as close to the pictures that Puca has for us to use. Like I said, if you do purchase from us, you can get the pattern for free. It's designed to sell her beads, so you can get that free with your purchase of the beads. So if you do have it and you're following along, and again, just to show you kind of that little sheet there, we are going to start going through the Arcos when it is in an arc shape. So it looks like a rainbow, and I'm going to take my needle and thread through the left-hand hole of that little arc, leaving myself about a 2-inch tail. That way I'll be able to take that tail and just kind of hold on to it. If you know that you want to do this as a bracelet, you can leave a little bit longer of a tail. You can go back on then and put on your clasp. At the top here, when I'm bridging over the Arcos, it's always going to be the same pattern of 3 15-0s, 1 8, and 3 15s. To arch it over the Arcos, come down the left-hand hole, going from the top of the rainbow out towards the bottom, or I'm sorry, the right-hand hole. So we went from left to right, and you can see that's just going to kind of sit right there on top of the Arcos bead. When we're coming out the center then, or coming out towards the center of the bead, we get to add our first ISO bead. To add the ISO, you take a 15-0, an ISO, and it doesn't matter which hole you're going through because it's the same, and then a 15-0. To lock the ISO in place, you're going to go back up through the left-hand hole of the Arcos bead. You can see that gets that first little kind of component right in place there. You can see that tail coming out, and there we have it. To get back in the design and to add more onto the design and start our little basically first element, we're going to kind of reinforce or circle our thread around, going through the 15 O's and the 8 O at the top of the Arcos bead, coming back down the other side of the Arcos. So you'll end up with your thread and needle coming out right along the opposite end of the starter thread. To progress on, we're going to go through the 15 O and through that first hole of the EOS bead. From the first hole of the EOS, you're going to go from the first hole, or that top hole, to the bottom hole, reversing the needle from going towards the left to now going towards the right. The reason I chose the gray thread is because you're really going to get it kind of masked really well right along that EOS bead because of the coloring. Now we're in a position where we can actually add on to our design. To add on to our design, we get to do the 2 more Arcos beads in kind of that arching fashion, as well as add on another EOS bead. To start that design, when I'm coming out here, and I'll kind of do it laying it down here, we're going to hold our Arcos beads like they're kind of on the sides. And if you want to put them in place, you can put them in place so that way you can kind of follow along. We're going to again take the Arcos like it is a rainbow, go up through the left-hand hole of that rainbow, and again I'm at the top, so anytime I'm at the top of the Arcos, on go 3 15s, an 8 O seed bead, and then 3 15s. From there, I'm going to go down the right-hand side of the rainbow there and pull the thread out. And that's going to create kind of that first little arch. When I'm in between the 2 beads, I'm going to add another one of my ESOs, and then I'm going to start my rainbow again through the left-hand side, up through the top. And you can see then when you hold it down next to your project that you already started, it gets that nice kind of closure. At the top then, along the top of the Arcos bead, on go your 3 15s and your 8, and then your 3 15s. When you're looking at it like a rainbow, you're going to come down the right-hand side of that Arcos bead and also through the EOS and that first right-hand side hole of the Arcos across from it. Give a nice little pull, and that's going to pull that second element in. Just like we did along the first one, we are going to go through the 15s and the 8s, through the ESO, and then step up from the ESO and get ready to add our next component. So stepping through and kind of getting ready to add that component, go ahead and take your needle through the seed beads along the right-hand Arcos bead, also through that right-hand hole of the Arcos bead, as well as through the first hole of the EOS bead. And give a tight little pull, and that's going to lock that in place. To step up and continue with the design, same thing, we're going to go from the top hole of that EOS bead to the bottom hole while we're reversing the thread direction from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And then give a nice pull, because that's going to kind of lock that in place there. To continue, we are going to put on the Arcos. This time they're going to be in a bowl or an upside down rainbow or a U shape. So we're going to be thinking about them in a U shape rather than kind of a rainbow shape, because we're reversing the direction that they sit. That's, I think, the coolest thing about the Arcos, is that you can really get some dimension with them because they are kind of reversible. For this design here, you are going to pick up a 15-0 first, because that's going to sit right next to the EOS bead. From there, we're going to add the first of our 4 Arcos that we're adding. When you put the Arcos in kind of that noodle shape there, or that bowl shape, we're going to be going down the right-hand side hole of the bowl. I'm adding that first one in. Once I have that down on the right-hand side, I'm going to add in my next little Arcos kind of bowl shape. And we're going to sit that bowl there. And we're going to go through the left-hand side of that bowl. And that's going to kind of sit them funky there on the side. When you're coming out the side of that Arcos that's on the right, you can either put an 11-0, or I'm sorry, a 15-0, an 8-0, and a 15-0. Or here in this case, just to add her other design element, Puca designed it with one of the Minos bead. So I grabbed one of the Minos just to show you, but if you want to, you can design it with an 8-0 in the middle. So I'm going to add a 15, my Minos bead, and a 15. And then I'm going to come down the right-hand side of that U-shaped Arcos that I'm already through. You can see how it's kind of taking shape there. Now I'm going to add another one of my Arcos, again in that kind of U shape. I'm going to go up through the left-hand side. Let that kind of hang out there in place. And then as I'm coming out that one, I'm going to add the next of my ESO beads to act as a connector. So 15-0, ESO, 15-0, up or down through the right-hand side of that little Arcos bowl. Another little tight pull, and that gets us our third Arcos in place. To put in our last of our Arcos bead here, we are going to get ready to add the fourth. Same deal, grab another Arcos. We're going to go through that left-hand side again of the bowl shape. Kind of flip it in place if you need to, so you can see it and visualize it. On the side then, it's up to you if you want to do 15, 8, 15, or if you want to do 15, Minos, 15, according to Puca's pattern. As I'm going through then that last hole of the fourth Arcos bead that I put on, I'm also going to go through the outermost hole of the first Arcos bead that I put on in this group of 4. And that's basically going to close up that little cross section. You can see here that closes that up. To connect this one to the ESO before it, add a 15-0. And then you're going to go through the ESO that sits right above and pull the thread. And that is going to get your next little component in place. If you want to and you want to keep it open, you could just take your thread and go right along that outer edge, tracing the thread edge till you get down to your ESO bead. In the case of Puca's design, we're going to drop a little crystal right in the middle to add a little bling. To do so, when you're coming out of your ESO bead, go through your 15 as well as your first Arco through the right-hand hole of that bowl-shaped Arco. When I'm coming out there, I'm going to add a 15, my Monty, or an 8-0, it's up to you. If you add an 8-0, you're going to add 2 15s, and then a 15 after the Monty. At the baseline here then, it's going to go on a diagonal. You can see my Monty is flipping. That doesn't matter yet because I'm only through the first hole. We'll make sure it's sitting correctly and upright as we come back the other side. To take the thread across the middle of the Arcos, you're going to go from the top Arcos from the right-hand hole to the bottom Arcos left-hand hole. It's going to kind of lock that in place there. Circle around then, reinforcing that 15-0 in the ESO and getting your thread and needle to the opposite side. When you go through the opposite side, come out the right-hand hole of that bottom Arcos bead. So your thread's coming out right in the middle. Grab a 15-0. Make sure that Monty is sitting the way that you want it to with the crystal facing up. Add a 15 on your needle. Go through the Monty. Add another 15-0 on your needle. And go through that top left hole of the Arcos bead. And that's going to get that crystal right in place to sit nice and pretty. And it's hard with the crystal to always see them, so I'm going to hold it up there. What we need to do now is circle the thread around so that way we can come down to our final ESO bead here to add back in and repeat our pattern. To circle around, I'm going to go through that 15-0 ESO 15 again. You can either cut down through the middle, which I'm going to do, or you can go around the outer edge. That's up to you. If you want to keep the middle open again, what you would do is go through the arcos here, the arcos there, right down into the ESO. I'm going to go through the arcos on the right-hand side of that first arcos that we put on. Drop down on the diagonal through the crystal, Monty, and the 15s. And then drop down the arcos, the bottom one on the left-hand side. Once I'm out that bottom arcos, go through the 15 and the EOS, and that'll bring it off on the side of the EOS. To progress, go through the bottom hole of the same EOS, switching the thread from coming out on the right to the left, which is going to expose a little bit of thread on the outer edge of that EOS bead. Now we simply get to repeat the patterns. So to repeat the patterns, and I think actually I really do like this, I think I'll just keep going to do a bracelet to kind of show you guys the finished product of the bracelet when we have the picture. But to keep going here and to do another section of the arches, what we're going to do is grab 2 more of our arcos beads there, go through the whole of the arcos. That's going to face it kind of inward. Grab your 3 15s, 8-0, 3 15s. And when working with the arcos, you want to think about it almost as a kind of cylindrical project. That because you're kind of circling around and using a lot of thread passes going kind of around in a circle. So I've got my first little arcos in there. Again, remember you've got to add another Minos in. Right there at the bottom to kind of connect it all. Add your next arcos. Seed beads for the side of it. And then from there, go down the opposite side of that same arcos. I'll shorten my tail here. And then go through the Minos, or the, EOS bead at the top, as well as through the arcos that we just first put on in this grouping of 2, and then down the seed beads along the side to get to that bottom EOS. So again, how I was saying it, you're kind of thinking of it circular because you're really kind of spinning around the project. And you can see sometimes I hold it so it's facing that the start is down, sometimes it's up because I am reversing constantly the direction that I'm going. Make your thread and needle come out through the EOS bead, and then take your thread and needle from the first hole of the EOS to the second hole, reversing the thread direction. So it's easy to add those kind of outer edges. What I'll do now again is go through adding the little kind of cross pattern there with my 3 arcos, my 1 EOS that I'll need to add, and then those 2 Minos and my crystal hanging out up there. To get started, again, I'm going to go through and add my first of my arcos. So I'm going to go down kind of that left-hand side of the arcos. And you can put them out, you can lay them out, sorry about that there, so that way you know exactly which direction they are going if you need to. Oops, and I forgot to add my 15-0, that's my fault. So when you start that second cross section, you need to add your 15-0 first, and then your arcos bead. Once you're there and your arcos and your 15-0 are kind of in place, remember it's just going to hang out on one side and we'll connect it at the end. Add your next arcos so that it's facing outward. I'm going to go through that right-hand hole there. When I'm out the sides, again, the 15 Minos 15 or 15-8 15. Go through the other side of the arcos. So I'm really just going around like I said, almost in a circle, kind of locking those in place. The bottom Arcos, as I put it in place there, I'm going to add another one of my EOS with a 15 on either side and through the Arcos. So I'm filling in the center holes of the Arcos versus the other little piece of it where you're filling the outside. To add my last of my Arcos in, going through and adding it. When I get to the intersection here, 15, Minos, 15, go through the second hole, and as I come out the top of that one Arcos bead, I'm going to go through the very first Arcos, through the outer hole that's not connected yet, and then to connect it to the EOS, grab a 15-0, connect to the EOS. And that's going to connect that component in. Once I have that component connected, it's time for another crystal. And just to go over the crystal again, you're coming down the Arcos right underneath the 15-0 that you are going through or coming out of. Once you're here, a 15-0 goes on, your Monty goes on, and then a 15. If you're unfamiliar with Monties, they are a little cross section. They have a cross along the back that the thread crisscrosses along the back. Once you're through there, you're going to take the thread and needle to the opposite corner of the Arcos below and go through that. To get the Monty to sit correctly, we're going to go back through it, going through the EOS and the 15s along the bottom. Back up that same Arcos bead on the opposite side and out. Once we're through there, grab a 15, go through the Monty, making sure that you're going through that opposite hole and also that your crystals are both facing upward. Once I'm through the Monty, grab another 15 and go through the right-hand side of that first Arcos bead. Kind of force that little 15-0 to cooperate and sit in place if it doesn't want to. And then to get to the bottom, to add my next component, through the 15, ESO, 15 at the top, and then down through the Arcos, down through the 15, through that diagonal Monty, and the 15s that sit on the side of it, and through that left or right hand hole of the last Arcos bead. Go through the first 15-0 and the EOS bead, oops, and then through the EOS in the opposite direction, basically stepping up to the next portion of the link. So in the little design that I have, and I followed Puca's instructions to see exactly kind of how far the link or the component is that she had, I would do one more of my little O shape there, and then just add that single Arcos on the top. I'm going to do one more O, one more X, one more O, and then I'll get the single component on the bottom there. That way I can add a clasp to it if I would like to. So I was just going to show you the component like I did before based on the instructions, but I really liked it, so I actually kept going. I ended up with 5 crosses, and I have my kind of O's on the outer edge. I also have my starting point. That's going to make it too long for my wrist. So what I'm going to do is show you guys. I'm going to take it back off and add a button to the end. I grabbed a aluminum silver cup button, and I'll add that to the end of the project. To kind of keep going and actually add the clasp, what I'm going to do is make a loop on this end because I have more thread. And then with the shorter thread, once I take off that starter area, I'll add my button. To start my thread, I'm coming out of my last EOS bead, like I would be getting ready to start another little cross section. And I will tell you, here's what I have left of the Arcos beads. So if you do want to kind of follow along, and I'll be taking one off. And this will make it pretty standard size in length. I'm going to go ahead and add a bunch of my 15-0 seed beads. If you want to, you could add your 8-0 seed beads as well. Or you could add a wire guard and a metal clasp if you wanted to do that, if you weren't into the buttons. It would look really pretty with one of the crystal clasps that we have as well. So once I have a bunch of my 15-0s on, enough that I know that it'll fit through the cup button, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce the loop by going back through that last EOS bead and taking my thread and needle back through the loop the whole way. And each time I've done one of the Puca designs, I've actually really enjoyed making them more than I thought that I would based on the pictures. I think they turn out a lot prettier than the pictures. This is the Mina design again, and the Mina design turned out really nice as just a pendant that I did. Once I have my loop and gone through it twice, I'm going to tie off my thread. To do so, I'm going to backtrack through the EOS here, come out the Arcos, and I'm also out one of the 15-0s, that doesn't matter. Pull my tail through there. And now I'm going to go back through the project a little bit, and along the project, tie along what's called the bridge threads, or the threads that go between the beads, making a loop, sewing through that loop once or twice, which creates a knot that'll sit in between the beads. Sew through a couple more beads and go further back in the project and tie off again. And I'll do this about 3 times to tie off the different ends there, and then go in and you can either super glue them or burn them down with a thread burner. That's kind of up to you how you want to actually close it off. I'm going to go over here to the other EOS bead and go through, kind of push my needle through, have it come out the end there, and do another tie off here. On the other end, like I said, it's a little bit long with that starter bead on it. So I'm actually going to take that little starter Arcos that we added off. That would work really well if it was a component, if you were adding it to the ends, but since I am doing a full bracelet, I'm just going to end it after one of my O's. Burn down my thread end there, and then take the thread and burn it down into a little stopper. And then you have that one end done. On this other end now, what I'm going to do is remove the actual last bead. And what that's going to do is bring me to my last little EOS. I can measure then and make sure that it's going to fit. Get your pliers out if you need to. Flatten down the end of that thread. Grab a needle and thread it up. To add my button on the other side, I'm going to take 3 of my 15s and go up through the back of the button. Out the top of the button, I'm going to add a 15, 8, 15 down the other side of the button there. Before pulling it tight, I'll show you that I'm going to add 3 more 15s and then go through the ESO from the opposite side. It's kind of just like we did the loop, but instead of the loop, we're adding a button. Going to reinforce that button by sewing back through all the beads and then down the other side of the button. And once you're through the button, we're just going to do like we did previously, where you're going to go back and tie it off in the actual project itself. So I liked this one so much that I kept going for you guys. So sorry if you didn't have a button or anything to start with. Hopefully you took a little break and grabbed one of those. I'm going to reinforce it one more time, going back up through the beads and back up through the button, making sure that my thread doesn't get linked on anywhere else. and down the opposite side. And then once I'm down the opposite side and out, again, I'll tie off the thread. Once you're finished with your burning and your thread ends, you have your pretty little Mina bracelet. If you did a pendant with the Mina, you could do it in kind of the same colors. You'd have enough that you can kind of switch out colors too. I have a couple of my Arcos left. Do the inner with one color, the outer with the other, and have some materials left to do the whole pendant as well if you get an extra tube of the Arcos. You could also, change up colors, doing the X's one color and kind of the O's another color. And I really do have to say I ended up, especially with the colors that I picked, liking this bracelet a lot, that I think I'm going to keep it for myself and play around with kind of the design a little bit more to do a little bit of a different look to it. It has an elegant look, but yet because the Arcos are a bigger bead, it kind of has a fun, funky look as well. Again, if you need any of the materials to do this Mina project by Puca, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop down menu on the side that we did the little pop-ups. If you don't have the little pop-ups, depending on what browser you're using or if you're on a mobile, underneath the video always there's a little description page. It says show more too. You can click on that little show more button and that'll drop down to you and have links to all of these different materials as well. I'll continue to try to get some more of these Puca designs done. That way it kind of translates it for you in French. You can work off both the pictured instructions as well as then the video and really have fun kind of playing around with her whimsical designs with the fun shaped beads that she has created. Again, if you want to get any of the materials, you can shop with me at PotomacBeads.com. You can also stay connected with us through our website, PotomacBeads.com, through our Instagram, through Facebook. You can also become a member of our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Show us what you're making with all the new materials, what you're designing, and really have fun interacting in a great forum with wonderful people helping to answer questions and give ideas and critiques and all of that. A wonderful group of jewelry artists that make all kinds of different styles of jewelry. Again, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Puca, for another beautiful design and allowing me to make a video on it. And we have fun kind of carrying her beads in the style that they have, the different Arcos and Minos, and the new ISO bead as well. And then those Cheops too. So those are Pucas as well. So have fun with all these different new shapes if you're playing around, and enjoy creating.